When you think of the phrase a working woman, what crosses your mind? Is it a teacher? Or maybe a nurse? Could it be a police officer, a pilot, or maybe even a presidential candidate? The job opportunities for women today are endless. In the early 1900s, there weren't many options for women. You know, the early 1900s where a woman couldn't serve on a jury, or open a bank account, or even vote? Yes, those 1900s. Luckily, we no longer live in the 1920s, and here at East Central University, it shows. With a female president, a female provost, female deans, directors, and mostly female professors, it looks like gender issues in the workplace are a thing of the past. I've always wondered how here at ECU we've managed to have women in the forefront, whereas most similar institutions have yet to have any women present in their administrations at all. ECU was established in 1909 in Ada, Oklahoma. There were 12 teachers employed, in which 3 of them were women: Kate Knight, Josephine Clark, and Bertha M. Rubble. This was the beginning of a long-standing history of women on staff here at ECU. Just 4 years after the establishment of ECU, 5,000 women were found gathering in Washington to propose a constitutional amendment that would allow them to vote. This was the first suffrage parade. Women from all walks of life marched, and although they were segregated, Black women also participated in the march. 5 years later, in 1918, the state of Oklahoma voted on a state constitutional amendment for women's suffrage. On November 5, 1918, almost 2 years before the ratification of the 19th Amendment, Oklahoma passed a universal women's suffrage amendment to their state constitution. Oklahoma became the first southern state to adopt full suffrage for women. A year later, in 1919, ECU became a teachers' college. Out of the 22 professors, 10 were women. 1920 became the year of the 19th Amendment. This allowed women the right to vote, with the exception of Black, Asian, Hispanic, and Native Americans. 3 years later, in 1923, the first version of the Equal Rights Amendment is set in motion. This states that men and women shall have equal rights throughout the U.S. and every other place in its jurisdiction. However, it was dropped and was reintroduced into Congress every session for half a century and is still yet to be passed. Did you know that today there are 13 states that have yet to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment? If you or anyone you know are residents of one of these 13 states, you can contact your senators for more information. Back at ECU, 1923 was a time of addition to faculty members. Out of the 9 new members added this semester, 6 were women, including Ms. Grace Threkel, Assistant Professor of Mathematics. Also in Oklahoma, Muriel Wright announced her candidacy for Chief of Choctaws. She was the first female to do so. President Roosevelt assigned the first female cabinet member, Frances Perkins, in 1933, and NASA had its first women to go through astronaut testing. But loopholes made it nearly impossible for these transitions to go smoothly. Between the National Recovery Act and NASA canceling the women's program 10 years later, women just could not catch a break. The 60s was a time of progression for women through laws. In 1963, the Equal Pay Act was passed, requiring equal wages regardless of sex, race, religion, or national origin of the employee. Women in America have worked tirelessly and fought to get rights to be seen as equal to their counterparts, not just in the household, but on the job site as well. Here at ECU, women have and are still paving the way for the future of this institution. I've spoken with 7 of some of the most influential women here at ECU. Here's what they have to say about their experiences of being a woman in the workplace.
Patricia Pearson, President, East Central University.
My name is Jessica Kilby. I'm the Executive Vice President for Administration and Finance here at East Central University in Ada, Oklahoma.
I'm Kate Lang. I'm the Dean of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences at East Central University in Ada, Oklahoma.
I am Dr. Christine Pappas, and I'm a professor at East Central University. I'm also the chair of the Department of Politics, Law, and Society.
I am Talina Aker. I am Assistant Director of Communications and Marketing at East Central University.
Hi, my name is Dr. Shirley Mixon, and I am the Director of the Interdisciplinary Studies Program, formerly known as General Studies.
Hi, my name is Sarah Engel. I am an Assistant Professor of Media here at ECU.
You know, when I was a graduate student, I was in a cohort of 12 PhD students at the University of Chicago, and I was the only female. And I developed really excellent relationships with the guys I worked with. What was particularly challenging for me then, and we're talking about the late 80s, early 90s, was that I got fewer fellowship dollars than the guys. And by the end of the time I was in graduate school, there were many more women in the cohorts. that were coming in, and they were getting funded at the same or almost the same rate that the men were getting funded at. And what I had to do was appreciate that the change had happened. And, there were days that, you'd say to yourself, well, this isn't fair. But you can't be bitter about that because times change and you have to be happy for the women who are getting the better funding. Did I experience bias? Yes. Did it have a significant negative impact on my job performance? No, I don't think so.
Well, I have experienced microaggression. I've had men talk over me. I've been in meetings just where people think I'm a secretary as opposed to the president. I get a lot of, oh, you're the president? And it's not so much that they're asking the question, it's how they ask the question that quite honestly is offensive.
I was named a superior of a gentleman that had been there a while, and we tend to conflict, and I don't know if it was because of my age difference, because I was in my mid-20s, or if it was because I was also a young female, or just a female in general, that he had a problem with it. And it was frustrating, because I didn't like him going over my head to another man to say, hey, she said to do this, do you really want me to do this? When really it was my superior telling me to tell this guy something, and he just went over my head. So it was quite frustrating to deal with that situation.
I took a group of young women to the Oklahoma State Senate. This was 15 years ago now. And they all walk in in their pretty dresses, and all the senators are mainly men. Even now, it's like 40 men and 8 women. They say, oh, joining us today are the young women of the National Education for Women program. And so all the senators look up and they see these girls in their pretty dresses. And what did they do but catcall and woohoo, whoop whistles. And the girls were just like stunned. These are like girls who just graduated from college, and they were just floored that this is how they were treated.
When I was probably just a couple of months on the job, an alum came in to visit, and this is one of those moments, I will always remember this. We sat here, we had a good conversation. He wanted a photo. Let's go have the photo. Let's go out by the gonfalons, by the orange flags. This will be great, backdrop. As we're walking out, he asked me to take my shoes off. And I just kind of stopped and I said, excuse me. He said, yeah, you need to take your shoes off. It's not right for women to be taller than men. I am a tall woman. I kind of like being a tall woman. What went through my head, I didn't say it because with grace, I wanted to say I don't have a box for you to stand on, I'm sorry. But all I said was let's sit and have the photo and no one will know you're short. But that was an odd moment to be told that even your height isn't appropriate for your gender. Yeah, that still happens today.
So we've actually had great strides in terms of women rising up at ECU. We've had a lot more deans, we've had vice presidents, female provosts, and then that female provost, Dr. Pearson, becomes the president. And so last year and this year, I, for the first time in my life, have had an all-female chain of command.
I think we do very well with gender equity. I don't know that we do as well with racial equity. I think this is a very white campus, and that's ironic when you consider the fact that our president is Native American. And we're sitting in Ada, Oklahoma, which is the headquarters of the Chickasaw Nation. And we have a large number of Native American students. We have African American students. We have students who identify as mixed race. And I think we're remarkably white in terms of our curriculum and in terms of some of the other assumptions we make about how the world works, given how diverse our campus is. I also think we can do a lot better in terms of LGBTQ friendliness.
I believe that there is a gender equality issue nationwide, and ECU is no exception to the gender equality issue. Men, even though this university is dominated by women at the higher level, men are generally the ones who receive the most recognition.
ECU, when you're looking at gender, we're pretty complex. I would say we're even balanced. I didn't go back and look up, but I would say when it comes to men and women, you know, we're probably an even mix. But when you look at diversity, we're probably not very diverse in all forms of diversity. I think a lot of that relates to where we're located. The area of the nation and the state where we're located, it's not very diverse. I think it's something that we're working on, we're very conscious about. We're looking at conferences to attend on how you expand your diversity when it comes to race and people of color, as to how you expand that diversity.
I have been at ECU since 1978. This is the end of the middle of my 41st year at ECU. See that I've been treated differently with the men and the women, because I have to say things more and longer to get heard, if you will. And oftentimes I'm never heard. People talk over me all the time whenever I go to meetings, but I would say part of that is not so much because I'm a woman, part of that is not because I'm Black, part of that is because I am more of a listener than a speaker, and I believe that you learn more by listening than by talking a lot of times. So some people confuse that with not having knowledge. And because they believe I don't have the knowledge, because I don't speak up, I don't get the respect.
I thought, was it because we have the skill set, or are we cheaper to hire? So that thought had crossed my mind, because I don't even doubt the abilities of the people in place right now. And it's really interesting to see them all in the same room. But it has crossed my mind, are we just cheaper?
I can't prove this because I haven't done the research, but I think there is certainly an equity issue in terms of pay, and there's an equity issue, in my opinion, in terms of respect.
The statistics just show quite simply that women make about 70% of what men do. I think that from at least what I know of here at ECU, the pay is equitable among genders, which is really lovely.
You know, when I have experienced it, I try and bring my best self to the table. There's been a few times I've had to just address it. I think most people who know me know I'm extremely just direct. That's probably the accountant in me. I don't believe I'm mean or ugly, but there's been a few times I've just had to address it. I try and do it on a one-on-one basis, but I've been fortunate to have really great male mentors and men supporters in my life who have made my career easier.
Men to champion women. We're not taking anything away from men. We're simply walking alongside, becoming part of the team to advance this nation into the greatness that we want it to have. And men need to champion women. Unless 50% of the population isn't equally supported, we're not going to get there. And that's what I want to leave with the audience. Women keep being pioneers. Men champion those women so that all of us will benefit.
It's okay to be a woman in the workforce. It's okay to work with men. It's okay to have kids. It's okay not to have kids. It's okay to be married. It's okay to not be married. This is your life. You make of it what you want, because really it is ours to take. It's not their world anymore.